You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another installment of the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, your June 7th, 2020 edition, your source for North American sports coverage by sports fans, for sports fans, delivered to you right here from the Niagara region. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Armchair GM Pod, as well as this show's brand new Twitter account by searching at AGM Sabres Pod. So we'll be posting all Sabres content on that new Twitter account, so make sure you check that out and you follow us there. Austin and myself will be posting on that very frequently with any Sabres news updates and news about this show as well, so make sure you check that out at AGM Sabres Pod. Give us a like over there. And then also on Facebook.com by searching the Armchair GMs Network. Listen to us live. Usually live. We are offline today on Spreaker.com and the free Spreaker app by searching the Armchair GMs as well. Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Deezer. So we're on many different platforms for you. Make sure you check us out on all those and give us a like and a subscribe on all those platforms if you do have them, and all bell icons for notifications when new episodes are posted. As well, check out our recently new website, armchairgmsports.com, for all podcasts, all articles, and all news about our sponsors and our contributors is on that website. Everything posted there for you guys. Again, armchairgmsports.com. And as always, I'm one of your hosts of the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres Edition, Cappy. You can follow me on Twitter at Caputs13 with a Canadian Z. And I'm always pleased to be joined on the Sabres portion of the network by my co-host, Austin. You can follow him on Twitter at Austin_Broad. He is a contributing writer for thechargingbuffalo.net. Austin, March 31st was the last time that we did a Sabres video or episode, and yeah, not a lot has changed. Sabres are, as we predicted, not going to be in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we kind of already predicted it, but now it's officially official. The NHL has approved their return to play with the top 24 teams, and the Sabres are just on the outside looking in yet again.
Isn't that typical Sabres? And Austin and I were talking in the pre-show prep before this episode. Just if they would have beaten Montreal the night after the season was canceled, they would have been in the playoffs. So isn't that typical Buffalo Sabres style to not even make a 24-team playoff instead of a 16-team format? Yeah,
exactly. It was typical, and in also typical Sabres fashion, at least with the way that the Sabres have been run this year, is on the day that they were announced that they wouldn't be making the playoffs, Kim Pegula came out and publicly told the Associated Press that Jason Botterill will be back for a fourth season, and that the reasoning is that they kind of know a little bit more than the fans. So it was just a perfect end to a perfectly terrible season for the Sabres on and off the ice.
That's all I can basically say about that.
Yeah.
And it's the end of the 50th anniversary season, which is a big shame as well that the 50th season was cut short due to the coronavirus pandemic. But going off that, Austin, you and I discussed in the last episode, I know it's been a while. It's been a while since we did an episode. But you know what? They really didn't deserve to make the playoffs this year. I mean, if they couldn't make a 16-team playoff, then they really didn't deserve to make a 24-team playoff. And I believe Jack Eichel says that in his Zoom conference call that we'll get into later on. But just going off that, Austin, I mean, the season is going to continue for 24 teams. The Sabres aren't one of those teams. They're one of 7 that isn't going to make it. So, I mean, you know what? They just need to build towards next season whenever that does happen. We don't know if it's going to be December, January, who knows, but they're going to have to get in shape real quick, and they have a long time to kind of prepare themselves for next season and what it takes to get to the playoffs and be one of those 16 or 24 teams in the playoffs. But this year had way too many up and downs, and you know what? They looked like they were in it near the trade deadline, and then they went out west for that Western road trip and just got absolutely annihilated by a lot of good teams out there. And you know what? That was basically the story of the season. A lot of peaks and valleys, but at the end of the day, they just didn't get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's going to be a long time. If just going off the NBA's timeline, they're not expecting to start 2020, 2021 until December 1st. So if there's something similar along that lines, we're looking at December. So we're almost looking at 9 to 10 months without hockey for the Sabres, just based off that. So they do have a long time to reflect on everything that has happened, everything that they need to do going forward. That main thing is get some help for Jack Eichel, because once we talk about a Zoom call, he'll make it pretty clear that, he does care about Buffalo and he loves being here, but he is not happy with the way things have gone, and it's kind of hard to blame him. It's been 5 years of pretty much him being the entire team's offensive production, and it's been 5 years of just not getting any help from his teammates around him. Obviously, there's a few pieces here, but they have a Botterill being back. He's got a long time. We've said it every offseason, this could be make or break for the Sabres, but this is not only make or break for the Sabres, but this is make or break for Jason Botterill's GM career, because if he fails to get the Sabres to the playoffs next year, I don't think he'll get a shot as a GM anytime soon for the rest of his career, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into Botterill's interview as well later on, but that was pretty telling as well. And you know what? If you miss the playoffs by 2 points, there was lots of games during the season that I can probably pick 10 or 15 that they should have gotten 1 or even 2 points in a lot of those games. So to me, they don't really have an excuse to say, you know what, we would have made the playoffs if we would have played Montreal the next night. It really doesn't matter. And like you mentioned, a lot of people are on the hot seat here in Buffalo. The fans, it's been, almost a decade now since this team has experienced playoff hockey. And for a hockey, a very passionate hockey market here in Buffalo, that's just not going to cut it. And been through many coaches and GMs through this time. And, the turmoil that took place between the fans against the ownership this year was another big thing that needed to be mended, and still hasn't been mended to this day. But, there's lots of time to think about that. And with what's going on in the world right now, it's a very weird time for the NHL and for the Sabres. You know what? They've got a lot of things to work on here, and we can jump ahead here to looking at the draft lottery now. Once again, unfortunately, it's something that we've been tired of looking at for many years here in Buffalo. But in typical Buffalo fashion, they're the last team to miss the playoffs, which means that they have the worst lottery odds of the teams that missed the playoffs. So they currently sit in 7th place for the draft lottery odds. And looking at that, Detroit has an 18.5% chance, Ottawa with 13.5%, then also with the 11.5% that they got from San Jose, which, as the Sharks being my second team, I don't really want to talk about that. The Los Angeles Kings with 9.5%, Anaheim at 8.5%, New Jersey at 7.5%, and Buffalo sitting at 6.5%, and will only be 0.5 better than a team that gets knocked out of this current 24-team playoff whenever it does get underway, Austin. So what do you think of the draft lottery? I know you kind of have some strong opinions on the way the NHL does it.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, based off the odds, Buffalo's most likely destination is picking 8th, which is just, it's not obviously not Buffalo Sabres' fault because they didn't make the draft lottery the way it is, but that would be such a typical Buffalo Sabres ending, is the first team that gets kicked out of the play-in round, who shouldn't even be in the lottery, passing the Sabres somehow. That would just be the cherry on top, because it's ridiculous. But yeah, I do have some strong thoughts. I think that if this was the route the NHL was going, 24 teams get to resume play, the 7 teams don't get to resume play. I mean, it would have just made sense to have a lottery with those 7 teams. But in typical NHL fashion, they're going to have a lottery with those 7 teams, but they're also going to potentially have a phase 2 of a lottery once the play-in round is over. It's super complicated. I don't understand why they decided it was the way to do it. I know they're trying to do their normal draft lottery style, but given the fact that this isn't a normal postseason style, I think it would have made sense to just do the lottery with the 7 teams. They have nothing else. Give them a chance at winning the first overall pick and not having to worry about these 24 teams that get to play. 8 of those teams have a chance at also playing their season and continuing, and then also maybe getting the first overall pick. It just doesn't seem logical, but that's what the NHL did. So
yeah, it's like there's the same amount of teams in the lottery as there is every other year, but the problem is that those other 8 teams wouldn't be in the playoffs in the other draft lottery situations. So they have, like you said, they could basically have a chance at getting their cake and eating it too, I guess you could say, because they have a chance to win the Stanley Cup, but then they also have a chance at getting the first overall pick in the draft. So to me, that just doesn't really seem fair, especially for the 7 teams that don't get to continue their season. I really don't understand, and if they were going to give those teams odds, I think they should have a lot less of a chance to win the lottery than the top 7 teams. Like, for right now, Montreal is slated in the 8th slot. They only have a 0.5% less of a chance to make it than to win it than Buffalo, and they get to be in the playoffs and continue their season. I just don't think that's the right scenario to be going with.
Yeah, like, to me, it wouldn't have made any sense. But to me, if you were going to give all those teams a shot at the lottery, you should have let every team continue their season and maybe try. I don't know. I don't know what the logical solution was. I think the 7 teams being the only teams for the lottery would have made sense. But yeah, like you said, what if the Pittsburgh Penguins lose their play-in round, and then they also have a chance at the lottery? Like, that would just be perfect for the NHL. I kind of hope it happens because it'll make them look sillier. A team like Pittsburgh losing in the play-in round and then winning the lottery and adding Lafreniere to a team with Crosby and Malkin, that would just be such a embarrassing look for the NHL, but it's almost what they've set themselves up for based off of this format that they've decided to use.
Yep, and that would be typical Buffalo to not be anywhere close to that.
Yeah.
Looking at the Sabres here, like you mentioned, their most likely destination that they're going to be picking is 8. They have a 39.5% chance to pick 8th overall, 26% chance of picking 7th, where they are slated right now, and then a 13% chance to pick 9th. So realistically, it looks like they have a better chance at slipping in the lottery than they do staying at 7. And looking at that, the Sabres have had a lot of picks in this area over the last probably decade here. We've had Ristolainen, Casey Middlestat, Alex Nylander, Dylan Cousins was around that area, and did I mention Ristolainen?
Yeah, you mentioned Ristolainen.
So there's a lot of Sabres picks in that area that some you can argue that some of them have been good picks in that area, some of them have not been good in that area. Alex Nylander, but you know what? If the Sabres are projected there, we can talk about a draft preview show, which you've been doing some draft profile stuff on the chargingbuffalo.net about a couple players that might be available for Buffalo at their position. But for me, as much as I want the Sabres to use that draft pick, there's also a part of me that just says, we've used enough of these draft picks. It's time to go and trade it for the desperate need down the middle at center, which I believe was a question that was brought up to Jason Botterill, which we'll get into with the interviews later on. But to me, I'm just sick and tired of looking at these first-round picks and having to wait 3 or 4 years down the road to see what these guys' potential is. And you know what? If the right trade is available this year, I'm okay with them trading that pick out and bringing in the dire position of need, and which is the center ice position down the middle.
Yeah, I mean, there's been talks, and I don't know, I think there was a rumor put out there, I forget by who, that if Buffalo doesn't win the lottery, that they would consider throwing in the 7th or 8th overall pick to maybe entice San Jose to get Thomas Hertl or a trade like that. I don't know if I'm there yet. I feel like I said, I've been doing a lot of draft work right now, so I'm getting into this draft class pretty deep, and the top 10 is pretty strong, and depending on who you pick and what their strategy would be, they're going to get a really solid player. Again, it's unfortunate that you're not going to get a player that makes an impact next year, which is what they need, but you're going to get a really good player. But I do firmly believe that this summer Jason Botterill needs to throw the 2021 first round draft pick. Even if you have to lottery protect it, go ahead and do it. But that should absolutely be in play. Ristolainen should absolutely be in play. Montour, Colin Miller, anybody not named Jack Eichel and Rasmus Dahlin. And I almost want to throw Sam Reinhart in there, but just because Sam Reinhart trade would be eerily similar to a Ryan O'Reilly trade, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. But pretty much anyone not named Jack Eichel and Rasmus Dahlin should be available to get for a trade. And I mean, we'll see what happens, but as of right now, I'm not really there yet with trading 8th overall pick, depending on what the return would be. But right now, I'm hoping that's off the table right now. But I guess you never know.
Yeah, I mean, with Botterill's track record, is he really going to take 2 CHL players back to back in the first round? We know how much he loves the college route and the European players,
but that's going to bode well for him this year because the European class in the top 10 is pretty strong this year. Mm-hmm. So I mean, his strategy, as unorthodox as it is a little bit logical, but as unorthodox as it is, it could play into his hand this year. But I mean, we'll see. He's like, we'll talk about it later once we talk about his interview, but he's got so much on his plate this year that he literally can't afford to make any mistakes this offseason.
Yeah, he's basically got to go full Tim Murray and trade away a bunch of draft picks to try to save his job going into next year.
Pretty much.
As half joking as I am and half serious, but going off of that, we have a few other news regarding the players on the Sabres. So firstly, Kyle Okposo had successful knee surgery and is expected to make a full recovery in about 6 weeks. So it doesn't really matter for the Sabres. I don't even think it mattered if he wasn't going to be ready for 4 or 5 months. I don't think it would have mattered. So Kyle Okposo will, hopefully by the time the Sabres play another game, which, at this point it's looking like December or January, Kyle Okposo will be 100% from that knee surgery that he had just a few days ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it doesn't matter. The 6-week recovery period obviously means nothing for the Sabres right now, but it's good for him that he was able to get that surgery done, and he's fit nicely into his little fourth line role, and he's actually, once you get past his salary cap figure, he's been a really valuable player for the Sabres this year, so it'll be good to have him back. Yep. And healthy next year, so that's always a positive. Yeah. Whenever next year is for Buffalo, because like you said, we have no idea.
Yeah, the log line played really well this year. I mean, the Girgensons, Larson, and Okposo line, that was, I don't know if this is good or a bad thing, but it was one of the Sabres' most consistent lines down the stretch of the season, and you can have your feelings about that either way. And like you said, trying to look past Okposo's massive contract, but like you said, I think he really found his role with the Sabres this year, and if that is, a $6 million player playing fourth line, you know what? He was effective in doing that, and him, Girgensons, and Larson really found a good chemistry there, and Ralph Krueger liked using them a lot, sometimes over other players that probably should have been playing, but that's a discussion for another day. But just what have you thought of Okposo in that line this year that kind of really, showed the fans a little bit more than what we had expected from them?
Yeah, like you said, you could have your feelings one way or the other. It was an extremely effective line for the Sabres. At times, it was, unfortunately, Buffalo's second best line. And I mean, I really like the role that Okposo has carved out for himself. Larson and Girgensons is a little bit different. They were both really good this year, but they're both pending UFAs. They've been here for so long. Does Buffalo want to bring them back? I mean, I would seriously consider bringing back at least one of them, but at this point, do they both want to be back? They've been here through the worst times and it hasn't gotten any better. And they're probably going to have some value up on the open market, so this might be, unfortunately for the Sabres, it might be good and bad. It's bad because you're losing those two players who actually carved out really good roles and played well this year, but now that might be what has been needed to happen for Buffalo to force some roster turnover, and maybe we get some youth and some speed into the lineup via a guy like Rasmus Asplund or even Sean Malone or Brett Murray from Rochester. So it's up and down. I really like that line, but it seems like on both sides, that was probably the last year for that line, because I definitely don't see Girgensons and Larson coming back. Maybe one of the two do, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree that probably Girgensons or Larson will be back, not both of them. That's something that we can discuss for a long period of time during a off-season discussion on what the Sabres should probably be doing with their off-season, but we don't really know when the off-season begins, so we'll have to wait for that discussion for another day. But like you said, I don't think that line will be back completely next year, but Kyle Okposo will have surgery, and we'll see how he progresses, and hopefully is back 100% by the time the Sabres play another game. And the other bit of news that was interesting was the Lawrence Pilot situation, Austin. So quickly touch on that, and there's a really big negative going on with Buffalo thinking that he won't be back, agreeing to play in the KHL. But you discussed to me that there is an interesting out clause with this contract.
Yeah, so I think it was Joe Yerdon from The Athletic who reported that he believes that there's an NHL out clause in this contract. If true, I don't know if everything's been reported, but that's just what I remember reading. If it's true, it could bode well, because the KHL is probably going to start September, October, based off of they canceled their league, and they're probably just going to go full on preparing to start on time. So that could be a potential, it could be a leverage move for Pilot. Leverage. He's a pending restricted free agent. He's 24 years old. He's been playing pro hockey for a while. Again, did he dominate the AHL like this year like he did last year? No, I mean, he had some ups and downs, but he was still an effective enough NHLer where he probably should have been in the NHL. But, we had a log jam. We didn't move anybody until we moved Scandella in December, and then we let Bogosian go. It was just a log jam, and they couldn't find a way to make Pilot fit because he had that two-way contract. So he got sent down, and they let him sit there too long, and I don't blame him for being upset and signing out with another league because he was a pending RFA and he had no free agency rights in the NHL. So I hope it's just one of those situations where once the league starts, he opts out of that KHL contract and comes back to Buffalo. But at this point, if he never comes back, I can't blame him because he's been grossly misused. I'm not saying he's a superstar, but he shouldn't have been in the AHL for 2 full years. It shouldn't have been that way.
And he only played in 13 games this year for the Sabres. No points. Just really didn't find his way. Didn't really know what his role was on the team. And I'm sure, like you mentioned, I'm sure playing behind guys like Bogosian and other defensemen that really were not effective at all this year. Scandella, like you mentioned, surely didn't help his morale with that, knowing that he was probably better than those guys, and then being sent to Rochester, going down there. And you know what? If he wants to leverage that he requires a top 4D spot next year before he wants to come back, if he wants to leverage a situation like that, I don't blame him if he wants to go that route.
Yeah, absolutely not. I don't blame him at all. Like I said, do I think he's an NHL superstar? No, of course I don't. But I do think he's a capable NHL defenseman who can carve out a nice role. And just unfortunately, he was very much misused in Buffalo, which with the amount of defensemen that we had, we thought that trade for a forward was going to come, and it never came, thus closing the spot for Pilot, who was waiver exempt, so he was obviously always going to be the victim there. Mm-hmm. It was just unfortunate, and good for him using. But hopefully, it's like I said, and you said, hopefully it's a leverage situation. I don't blame him for using it. Hopefully the relationship is salvageable and they can bring him back because he was a very effective defenseman when used properly and when given a consistent role, which unfortunately didn't happen very often.
Yeah, and to me, just if a trade isn't made, I really don't see him having a top 4 spot on this decor. You look, there's Dahlin, Ristolainen, Montour, Yoki Haru, McCabe, Miller. Like realistically, that's your top 6D right there.
Yep.
So I mean, I don't blame him if he doesn't feel like he should be coming back because there really isn't a spot for him at this point unless a trade is made. And you know what, that could completely be on the table with, like we mentioned, Jason Botterill needing to make some big moves up front. So maybe giving up a piece on the defense is needed, but we'll have to wait and see with that. But for now, Lawrence Pilot is going to play in the KHL next season, so we'll have to see how that progresses. And like you said, his rights belong to Buffalo in that case that he does want to come back, but from his agent standpoint and the business standpoint, it kind of seems like a smart move on his part to go that route and kind of leverage the Sabres for a spot on the roster, which he has not been given a real opportunity the last 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, hopefully there is a trade. I mean, you just named off Buffalo's potential top 6, and I mean, it's a pretty solid top 6 actually. I'm not going to complain about the top 6 there, but guys like Ristolainen and McCabe, who have been here for a while. Even Montour, not that Montour's been bad, but with him being a restricted free agent this year and needing a contract and probably wanting a long-term contract, he could be a victim of, okay, we'll ship him out so someone else can give him that long-term commitment because who knows what his role will be and what he's worth. So I'm hoping, not even for Pilot's sake, just for Buffalo's sake, that one of those defensemen is moved out. So to open up a spot for somebody else, but I mean, we'll have to see how the offseason unfolds, whenever that is. I mean, right now, Buffalo can make trades with the 6 teams that didn't qualify, but I don't think that any of those teams will make trades. But it would be cool if they did, just to keep some news going, but who knows.
Can we get Jack Hughes from New Jersey?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a pretty bad year, He's looking like bust territory right now. Should probably tell Botterill to go up there with that selling point.
Yeah, and then Buffalo will be the team to salvage him somehow.
Yeah, that's another funny joke. But with that being said, guys, we're going to take our first commercial break on the show today, and we're going to come back with the title of this video being the the end of season interviews with the players and coaches and the GM. So we're going to get into that in our next segment here. And we'll be right back to discuss Ralph Krueger and GM Jason Botterill's end of year Zoom press conferences. So we'll be right back here on the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, serving Italian pizzas made with the freshest, top-quality ingredients. Loaded subs and our famous chicken wings, winners of the 2017 Reader's Choice Awards, and the brand-new recipients of the 2019 Reader's Choice Diamond Award from Niagara this week for Best Pizza in Niagara Falls. Open daily, located on the corner of Drummond Road and Dunn Street. Available for call-ahead pickup or delivery. 905-374-4400. Debit and credit accepted for both. You've tried the rest. It's time to try us. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano. Attention job seekers. If you're currently looking for work in the Niagara region, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Center, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road, Niagara Falls. Free services include resource area open to the public, resume and cover letter writing, community resource and referral information, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, second career information and registration assistance, and check out our available workshops under our events calendar on our website for more details at www.ehc.on.ca. The Niagara Employment Help Center. Marcel Dion Inc. Come in and check out our store and meet Marcel Dion himself. We have wall-to-wall NFL, MLB, and NHL licensed products and all kinds of collectibles. We specialize in autographed sports memorabilia. If you don't see what you're looking for, just ask and we'll find it for you. So next time you need a great gift idea for that sports fanatic in your life, or you need to add to your own collection, come visit us first. You won't be disappointed. 905-357-7678, Marcel Dion Inc. Chippin' Charlie's, it's where the locals go. Fun, friendly, and entertaining staff. You're not just a customer, you're family. Lots of TVs, amazing food, and always a great time. Open daily 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. Call 905-371-3428 for inquiries and reservations, located at 8189 Lundy's Lane, Niagara Falls. Chippin' Charlie's, it's where the locals go. Mid-City Motors Niagara, your premium source for pre-owned vehicles. Financing and leasing for all types of credit. Check them out at 4460 Drummond Road, Niagara Falls, or at mcmniagara.com. They are also happy to announce Mid-City Mechanic is now open. They can repair, maintain, and service all makes and models of vehicles. Conveniently located behind Mid-City Motors at Drummond Road and Perkins Street. They will be happy to help you keep your car on the road. 905-371-2277. That's Mid-City Motors and Mid-City Mechanic. You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network. All right, guys, welcome back to the second segment of today's Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Cappy and Austin back with you here. And Austin basically just went over the season in a nutshell in the first segment, and now we're going to get into these end of season, I guess they would be considered the locker room cleanout interviews, which obviously that can't take place. So we got these Zoom press final season, or the Zoom end of season press conferences that we got last week, and for you guys here, we're going to recap about 3 hours worth of of press conferences into these last two segments here of today's show. So instead of going back and listening to 3 hours worth of press conferences, which Austin and myself grinded out over the last week or so, we're just going to give you a recap here, so you don't have to go and listen to all of it. We got quotes from the players, Coach Ralph Krueger, and the GM Jason Botterill. So that being said, Austin, let's start off with the man on the hot seat this year, the GM of the Buffalo Sabres, Mr. Jason Botterill. His press conference was about, I think it was about 38 minutes long. And I just want to point out real quick, making a funny jab at the Sabres media members. Just, guys, learn how to use a backdrop. Seriously, some of you guys, like the way that you guys set up I don't know what you guys were thinking, but we got to be better as Buffalo Sabres media members, man. We got to look better than that. Some of your guys' backdrops were just gave my head a shake. But with that being said, Austin, let's talk about Jason Botterill here. And like we mentioned in the first segment, looks like it's going to be a make or break year for him as this Buffalo Sabres GM. And I've got a lot of quotes here from Jason Botterill, but just an overview, Austin. What did you think of Botterill's press conference, and did you really get anything from it that we haven't heard from him in the past?
Yeah, I mean, again, on the surface, with no context, he said some things that you want to hear, like he said he wants to address the forward group, that they need to score more, all that stuff. But, I mean, when you look at the context, he said those exact same things after the 2018 season, after the 2019 season, and now after the 2020 season. So, while on the surface it sounded good, when you look deeper at it, it's not really that good, because, cool, you can keep saying those things, but until you actually do something to address those areas, your words don't really mean anything. And that's where it's gotten to with Jason Botterill. And don't get me wrong, I totally understand him coming back when you look at it financially. He's got, I think, 1 year left on his contract. The Pegulas are already paying a lot of executives and coaches to not be here. So it can be basically a prove it deal, a prove it year. Show us you actually are right to be the GM going forward, and, we can erase some of the history. But if this is it, we'll let you walk after the season, and we won't have to worry about paying you anymore. So it makes sense, but his press conference, much like his regular season press conferences, they didn't really do much for me.
Did it really sound like a man that was really in a desperate situation and a guy that really had his job on the line? To me, it just kind of was the same Jason Botterill that we always get, just calm and pretty nonchalant about the situations that the team is in. And you know what, from a GM's perspective, you don't want him, going out there being guns a-blazing and just calling out everybody and just giving a bunch of, sound bites that need to be played on SportsCenter later on in the night. But you also want to hear a little bit more, just a little bit more of a confidence and a direction of where he wants the team to go. It doesn't really seem like a desperate guy who's going into the final year of his contract as a GM of an NHL team that really has some sort of chip on his shoulder to get to that next level and finally get this team over the hump that general managers and coaches before him could not do with this organization.
Yeah, like what I'm about to say is not a shot at Botterill. This is just the way he is, but he's not really, how do I say this? He's an emotional guy. We've seen him get angry, but when you listen to his press conferences, he's very monotone, and you can't really determine his mood based off what he says when he talks, because he doesn't really have that emotion behind his voice. So I'm not surprised that he didn't sound like a GM who has his back up against the wall, because I just think that he's just so monotone that you can't tell where he is. Or he's just really crazy and doesn't understand the situation that he's put himself in. But I'm going to hope it's the prior and not the latter out of those two.
Yep. So we'll get into some of the notable quotes from his 38-minute press conference. And starting off hot, Mike Harrington of the Buffalo News comes in hot, just asking Jason he basically just said, what is this team supposed to be, and when is this team finally going to get there? And basically just in typical Mike Harrington fashion, just kind of going at Botterill in a way of when is this team finally going to be successful. And Botterill's response to that was, get players developing in Rochester. We want D-men who are good puck movers, which we have, but for us to make another step, we need our forwards to score and need development from Middlestat, Tage Thompson, and Dylan Cousins. So he named 3 players there that he really wants a development from. One of them obviously just finished junior hockey, and then Tage Thompson unfortunately had the injury last year, didn't play much, and Casey Middlestat started with the Sabres, went down to Rochester, and continued to develop down there. So what do you think of Botterill mentioning those 3 players there from a development standpoint, which I just said standpoint, which I'm thinking I'm getting in the Jason Botterill press conference mode by saying standpoint. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So when you look at it, I mean, I saw some people panic about him mentioning those 3 guys, thinking, oh crap, he's relying on those 3. I didn't take it as that. But when you look at Buffalo's prospect pool, those are the big 3 in terms of forwards. We really don't have any other big name forward prospects that have a lot of skill. It's Tage Thompson, it's Middlestat, and it's Cousins. Like you said, unfortunately for Thompson, he got hurt in his first game with the Sabres this year. We never got to see anything. He was poised to have a massive year with Rochester. He was on fire to start the season. So I still think that he's so skilled and he's so big that if he can find a way to put it all together, he still will be something. And for Botterill's sake, he better be, because that was the big piece of the Roar trade. Middlestat, Botterill's first round draft pick, showed a lot of potential in the World Juniors, showed some skill in his NCAA career. I'm hoping that's just a case of he was rushed and he can still put it all together, because with Middlestat you can see it. He is extremely skilled. His issue is his whole career, junior hockey, anything, he's been able to rely solely on his skill. He went to an extra year of high school rather than going to the USHL before college. So he was in a league where he was so much better than everybody else that he didn't really have to play a well-structured, tightened game. He could just blow by everybody with speed and skill, because no one could stop him. He's now realizing that, hey man, speed and skill is great, but it's not everything. I can't rely solely on that, because in the NHL, everyone is speed and skilled. Cousins, we talked about it. He had an amazing year in the WHL. Unfortunately for him, it's either the NHL or the WHL again next year. And I think the Sabres are taking the same viewpoint I have, which is I don't see any benefit to him going into the WHL unless he looks completely lost in the next NHL preseason. So he might be on this team next year. Hopefully it's in a small role. They don't put a ton of pressure on him like they did with Middlestat, because we could also just see history repeat itself, even though I think Cousins is a much better prospect than Middlestat was at his age.
No, absolutely, and I think his two-way game is a lot better than what Middlestat's was going into his first year in the league. So I'll have to wait and see if Cousins is going to be more NHL ready than Middlestat was being thrown into that spot. A few other notable quotes here that I'll just run off for Jason Botterill. Talk quickly about Carter Hutton as a goaltender. He said Carter's last 2 years, his second halves haven't been as strong as his first halves. Yeah, no kidding. Playing good in the meaningful games is great, but we have to find a way to get over the hump in those environments. So again, talking about the playing meaningful games in March that he discussed multiple times during the season, and learning how to win in those environments against those really tough teams, which they did not do in that Western road trip when those were meaningful games. Then he talked about the penalty kill has to be better. The power play showed it can be a top 10 in the league, but special teams is a huge area that must be improved next season. So, Austin, what do you think of him talking about the special teams, penalty kill, and power play?
Yeah, it's a sentiment that we heard a lot from Krueger over the course of the season as well, too. I mean, when the power play was hot to start the year, the Sabres were hot. They were 9-1-2. So I do see some correlation there. I do think they need to improve their special teams drastically. It would help offset a little bit of their deficiencies. But the problem with that is we've already been told by Krueger that the same exact coaching staff is coming back next year. So unless Steve Smith just apparently suddenly gets good at his job when developing a penalty kill strategy, I don't know if there's going to be much improvement there. Same with the power play. They have the players like Jack Eichel, Rasmus Dahlin, Victor Olofsson, Sam Reinhart. They have the players to have a good power play, but the structure of the power play needs work. And again, the coach, unless he completely rehauls the system going into next year, power plays are different. They're streaky. Penalty kill, you can be good with a structure. So I'm more hopeful for the power play, but I'm not really that hopeful for the penalty kill, especially if Johan Larsson does walk, because he was probably their best penalty killer.
Yes, him and Girgensons were good at times this season on the penalty kill. Speaking of the power play, maybe they need to bring Dan Baalsma back to run that number one ranked power play that they had in that year that he was there. Yeah,
I mean, say what you want about Baalsma. The special teams did not suck when he was the head coach.
Well, the power play didn't. But
yeah.
With that being said, Victor Olofsson also being injured, I think, was also a big part of that. He was basically the trigger man on the power play, and when he was gone, it looked like they were definitely missing something there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when your power play is basically Dahlin to Jack to Olofsson, and then Olofsson goes down for a significant amount of time, it's going to throw a wrench in some things, but that's the whole thing, right? You can't predict injuries, and when you have a power play, you got to hope it produces. I mean, with the trades that they made, Cahoon will be here next year. Maybe he gets a spot on the second power play. Johansson, I don't know. They have the players to have a good power play, so now it's just hopefully they can find a good setup that works for them because they're going to need the power play next year.
And
they needed it this year, and it didn't show up. So.
And a net front presence is definitely needed. We always talk about how, they never have a guy go to the net, and they bring in a guy like Wayne Simmons, who has always been a net front presence on the power play for the Flyers. It was very lethal in his prime. Don't know if he's going to be back next year. Seems like a lot of players would like to have him back just because of the great character that he has in the locker room, but we'll have to see what he demands in free agency if he comes back. But Ristolainen played in front of the net a little bit, Chara-esque, having a giant defenseman stand in front of the net. But we'll have to wait and see what goes on with the power play, because the special teams needs to improve if this team wants to make the playoffs next year.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Simmons is a really good net front guy. That's the one thing he was good at. They used him there a little bit, but then they kind of stopped. I know he was here for a limited amount of games, so it's hard to make judgments there. But based off everything that he and Botterill said when he was acquired, I wouldn't be surprised if he is back on a one-year deal, just based off of Botterill and Simmons, the way they talked when that trade was made. It sounded like there was kind of a gentleman's agreement that he would be back again next year, but we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I'd be okay with it given the circumstances and depending on what the contract would look like. Jason Botterill also talks about we aren't talking about 3 to 4 years down the road when we want our young players to develop. We want it now, and those are the things we've been talking and trying to create as winning environments here. Players that want to be here. We have some already with what support they've shown in the community during this pandemic. There's always pressure with this position. I have to continue to build this team. We will have some flexibility when it comes to free agency and trades with the position we find ourselves in financially, and put ourselves in a position to be a contender next year when asked about the pressure of his job security. So what do you think of that? Just I know you've touched on it, that they do have a little bit more financial flexibility with some contracts coming off the books this year, but seems like Botterill knows that some moves have to be made here, and he has to show that he can use this flexibility to his advantage.
Yeah, I mean, he was dubbed as a cap guy when he was hired, so now he's got himself into a situation where he's going to have to show that he's a cap guy, and he's going to have to find the value there. When you talk about the Sabres, you talk about just pending restricted free agents. There's 4 huge ones. 5 if you want to count Mittelstadt, who will need a contract because he burned the first year of his entry level when he left college. But you have Reinhart, you have Brandon Montour, you have Victor Olofsson, and you have Dominic Cahoon, who are all restricted free agents who will all need contracts. And out of those 4, 3 of them are forwards and 3 of them are big parts of your team going forward, because Reinhart was a second overall pick. Olofsson has clearly shown that he's an extremely talented goal scorer. And Cahoon was Botterill's signature trade deadline acquisition. So those 3, then Montour on defense and Mittelstadt needing a new contract. They do have cap flexibility, but they do have some guys in-house that they need to take care of. And hopefully Sam Reinhart is a long-term deal that keeps him here for a while, because he's been a really talented player for the Sabres, and he is one of Jack's best friends. So he's got some guys to sign, but we'll see what happens after that. He will have some flexibility. I hope the one thing about Botterill is he doesn't spend big on July 1, which is a good thing. I like a GM who has that approach, but he's going to have to make some trades and make the numbers work, because he, like you said, he sounds like he knows he needs to improve drastically, especially this year pretty much being his last year if things don't get better.
And going off of that, he said, we are open to a lot of things in response to using the first-round pick as a trade piece this year. So we'll have to wait and see with that. He also went on to discuss, we feel that Jeff, in reference to Jeff Skinner, had a lot of chances. It gives us a lot of hope that the production will come back next season. So take that as you wish. He goes on to talk about Jack Eichel. Jack had a commitment to his defensive game, which led to more chances offensively for him and passing his knowledge onto other players. Great communication with Ralph was a big step in his development. So we'll talk about that after with Jack and Ralph. Seemed like they had a really good connection and a really, really good coach to captain relationship there, which seemed to just blossom throughout the season. And Jack has some words about Ralph that we'll talk about in a little bit. He said, our staff is ready for the draft if it happened tomorrow. So there you go. Jason Botterill goes on to say that if the draft, snap of a finger happened tomorrow, he'd be ready. Him and his staff would be ready to pick wherever they were picking. So we'll have to wait and see about that.
Yeah, I mean, again, who knows? Hopefully the June 26th lottery, I believe that's the date. Hopefully that just goes well and the Sabres get top 3 pick, or hopefully it goes well and all 3 of the winners are from the 7, so we know where the Sabres will be picking. Like I said, the draft lottery situation is a bit of a disaster, but there is hope that Buffalo will know where they'll be drafting and he can prepare for that. And if he does decide to use it as a trade chip, it better be a doozy.
It better be a doozy. And he goes on to end the press conference with a very interesting quote here. He said, "We've talked to the NHL about giving the 7 teams who aren't in the playoffs a camp to get ready after having so many months off compared to the 24 teams in the playoffs." So apparently Jason Botterill has had communications with the NHL about having some sort of camp, early camp, for the 7 teams that aren't in and over the teams that have that are going to continue their season. I guess that means going into the 2021 season, hoping that they will get some extra reps to get themselves back up to speed with the teams that have already been playing games and had some games in the last 8 or 9 months.
I mean, that's good. I don't think I heard that before, so that's good. I mean, let's face it, the 7 teams are going to need it. Like we just talked about it, we're looking at possibly 9 months without a hockey game for the Sabres based off everything that's happened. So it makes sense that the 7 teams would want that, and hopefully that is the truth because it'll be beneficial for sure.
Yep. So that was basically it for Jason Botterill. Like we said, a lot of the same stuff that we expect from him to be said, and a lot of stuff. A few things that caught my eye there, like him saying that he knows that he needs to make moves this offseason with the flexibility that this team has. So, you know what? Out of the 38 minutes, I think there was a few good sound bites from Botterill, but nothing too major for you to sit through 38 minutes worth of listening to him talk about his standpoints and situations that he loves to talk about. So, for me, like I said, few things there that I wrote down, but definitely if you're planning on going to listen to that, don't really sit through the whole 38 minutes. We basically just gave you a rundown of what to expect from it.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, he talks a lot, and sometimes those main points are buried, but I think we did a good job of covering the important parts of his press conference for sure.
Absolutely. And to end this segment, we're going to talk about Ralph Krueger's press conference there. He had about 45 minutes worth of audio there, got about a page and a half of notes from Ralph Krueger. So obviously a very smart man. That's one thing that Austin and I have talked about with Ralph Krueger, and we've texted each other this over the year that he's been here, is we're never going to question how intelligent he is as a man and as a hockey mind. He's very, when Ralph talks, people listen because he has a lot of, he can make you learn a lot of just listening to him talk. He's like I said, he's a good teacher. We can question whether his line combinations and ability to in-game coaching decisions are right or wrong, but you know what? He was a president of Southampton Football Club for a reason, and you know what? He is a very intelligent man, and it seems like from what we've talked about with the players, they really do respect this guy in his first year with the team, and he's definitely brought a positive environment to this culture that has definitely not been positive over the last 9 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said it perfectly there. Like we're never going to question Ralph's intelligence level and that he knows how to get the best out of people. He knows how to connect with people. He knows a lot about building relationships. It's a lot of those qualities that made him good at Southampton, and it's a lot of those qualities that, I've told you many times that I think he could be fit for an office role with the Sabres or any NHL team. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He's got a lot of those qualities. He still has time to grow as a coach. It was only his second time in the NHL as a head coach, and for the second time in the NHL, he didn't get a full season. So it's unfortunate for him. He does have time to grow as an NHL coach, but yeah, the players made it very clear that they like what he brought to this organization, and he was a pleasure to work with. So I don't imagine him going anywhere anytime soon. And now that we've had some time to cool off about it, I'm still not a fan of some of his coaching decisions, but I think he is probably a positive guy to be in Buffalo. And I think that if there is anyone who can potentially turn this around, he'd be at the top of the list because he's a very smart, positive guy who everyone seems to rally around and want to work with.
They need a guy like this to kind of, put out the fires, I guess you could say, with how hostile and how, frustrated this organization and the fan base is with this team. So I think Ralph Krueger is the right guy for the job. It's just, some of the decisions that he makes as a coach just are just, make our head scratch sometimes. But if there is a president of hockey ops role for Ralph Krueger in the future with this team, I'm with you 100% that he would be the perfect guy for a situation and a role like that. It seems like he'd be perfect for that fit, as he did it in Southampton, and he could get people to listen to his vision and bring in people that have that same vision as him of what he wants this organization and the culture of the team to be.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. Like we said, I think this is the last year for Botterill's contract, and if he's not back, there's an opening for a GM, and I would not be all surprised if somehow, some way, that ended up being Ralph Krueger's job if Botterill is gone after this year.
Yep. So that's stuff that we can discuss a lot over the next year, and who knows what that will be. But Ralph Krueger, I'd be, like we said, we'd be okay with him with any role on this team if head coaching is not the right fit for him. Going into his press conference, he said, there's two tales of this group. He was encouraged by the spirit, the maturity, and embracing what needed to do to win. And then the other side of not continuing the season and judged on the point totals and placement in the standings was a failure. But may the pain and disappointment help us grow. So Ralph Krueger, in typical Ralph Krueger motivational way, comes up with a motivational quote there to start the press conference. May the pain and disappointment help us grow. That's going to be on a wall somewhere in the atrium of the Key Bank Center.
Yeah, that's one of those moments that we talked about with Ralph. That's what he is. He's a smart guy with a way for words, and no matter what happens with Ralph, he's never negative, and that's potentially something that is refreshing for Buffalo, and hopefully it works out, because we've been waiting a long time for something to work out in Buffalo.
And the players seem like they need a guy like him that's not just going to throw players underneath the bus and, call each player out individually. He's going to try to turn it into what can they do better to get better. He says, we need to stay connected through this extended break. Stay strong in our communication, group and individual chats over Zoom. Set measurable targets for them and get them hungry for the next step. Leadership needs to drive two things, he says. A positive, constructive environment, and the other is the discipline and work ethic. As a leader, as a coach, or a player, those need to be the components. I like the people that I work with, and I love the Sabres fan base and the players. Expectations are only going to grow, and we're ready for that. So a few strong quotes there from Ralph Krueger, and then he has a little bit of a stronger quote here. He goes, a winning culture is reaching the potential when asked about what is a winning culture, which Buffalo has not experienced in a very long time. Each coach and player should demand that of themselves. The work there the players put in is 24/365 is what winners do. They just haven't reached the potential of the playoff line, as in quotations. Over the last 10 to 11 weeks, the work ethic they put in and the compete level make them winners, not losers. Individuals are winning, just not the group as a unit as of yet. So, Austin, what do you think of that quote there?
It's fancy coach speak, you know what I mean? Like, he talks about guys working hard, the results not coming there yet. What else is a coach going to say? Especially a coach like Ralph, who isn't going to call out his players in the media and things like that. So, it's fancy coach speak to me. It's not necessarily good. It's not necessarily bad at all either. It's just, that's what you say, right? When you don't really have an answer that you want to give to the media is, hey, they're working hard. Some guys have had some success. The results just weren't there. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't expect anything less than especially from an NHL head coach, because let's face it, most NHL head coaches, unless you're John Tortorella, don't really give a lot of quotable material.
Yeah, I can only imagine what it would be like with Tortorella here in Buffalo. That adding fuel to the fire, man. That would be something. But
that would be something.
Yeah, it would be good for entertainment standpoint. Don't know if he could be good for the organization. But with that being said, he goes on to talk about Jack Eichel a little bit. We wouldn't even have to say words to each other at some points this season. All we would have to do is just make eye contact on the bench was enough. Everything comes natural to our conversations when talking about the captain, franchise player, Jack Eichel. So obviously it looks like Ralph Krueger and Jack have this mutual level of respect for each other and understand what they need out of each other as two major key components of this team, and for them to be able to, I believe he spoke that they would just have a few sentences in the locker room, and they didn't really have to say a lot to each other as far as words, but just them knowing what each other was thinking or just making eye contact at certain points meant something to each other. And I think that's something that Jack hasn't had here with his coaches over his years here in Buffalo. And you know what, if Ralph Krueger is the guy to keep Jack Eichel in a positive mindset to continue to lead this team, then you know what, it is what it he needs to remain in that role, because if Jack Eichel is the leader of the team and he's not going to be able to motivate the players underneath him, and you know what, if Ralph Krueger is the one guy that's going to be able to get Jack Eichel to the next level to help get the rest of this team to this next level, then Ralph needs to stay with this team in that role.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's always a good thing when you hear about that type of unspoken connection between your captain and your coach. It's what you want. It's just unfortunate that it hasn't worked out to team success yet. I mean, can you say it's 100% coincidence that Jack Eichel's best career year came when Ralph Krueger arrived? I mean, no. I give a lot of credit to Jack because he's that good of a hockey player, but I also think that there was something inside Jack that Ralph was able to unlock this year, and that it definitely helped Jack's production. I don't think it's necessarily a coincidence. I don't think Ralph Krueger deserves 100% of the credit, but I think he deserves a lot of the credit, or some of the credit, as to why Jack had an amazing year this year. So, like you said, if that's what it takes, as long as those two have a good bond, then you have to keep that around, because you want your franchise player and captain to be motivated always, especially when things have not gone well for him in his first 5 seasons as a team standpoint. So if that's going to keep Jack motivated and happy, and if he respects the head coach, you keep them together for as long as you possibly can.
Absolutely. And this was the longest quote of the press conference from Ralph Krueger here. This is kind of a long one, so for you listeners out there, bear with us, and we'll try to wrap our heads around this very long and insightful answer from Ralph Krueger. He says, "We need to keep the picture simple. We have to open the viewfinder," apparently whatever the viewfinder is. "Through all platforms, we have been in contact with players physically about their fitness goals, but we also need to take a dive into each player's skill set individually and figure out the tactics to use them in their areas of expertise. Lastly, the mental side of it, which is very important here, and this is very telling from Ralph Krueger's perspective, what he thought of this season. The mental side of it, as we have to get stronger and not get fatigued or lose focus on the tasks at hand and lose their way. The 6 losses in a row killed our season, and I feel that it was all mental. I need to find ways to do that as a coach, keep the picture small of what we can control, stay strong, resilient, and connected, and on course. We have a lot of work to do in the off-season training camp and whenever the season starts for us again." So I thought that was the most telling part of Ralph Krueger's press conference there, was talking about the 6 losses in a row and how it basically killed their season as much as they didn't want to admit it while it was happening. And he said it was all mental, Austin. So what do you think of that?
I mean, I can't say it's 100% mental, but I do agree with a lot of what Ralph said there. I mean, let's face it, for a long time, the Sabres have been fragile mentally. Lack of team success will do that to you, but when you look at, I think it might have been Bylsma's second year, like final year here, they were, I think, 5 or 6 points behind the playoff spot when they came out of their bye week. Lost 3 in a row, season was over. We saw it last year, 10-game winning streak. All of a sudden, wheels start to bottom out. Mentally weak, can't recover from it. The season's over. Saw it this year, an amazing start to the season. Everything was going well. A couple losing streaks here and there. Season starts to go downhill. They picked it up again a little bit. Absolutely just devastating 6-game losing streak. Season's over. So, I mean, I do agree with him there that there is a mental aspect to the Sabres, and that they do need to improve their mental strength. They can't let those losses pile up and start to snowball. I mean, I think you can also say the same for Carter Hutton. I think a lot of his issue is mental, because we know Carter Hutton's a good goalie. He's shown great starts in his first 2 years in Buffalo, and then he goes through a rough stretch, and then his season just goes downhill from there. There's a lot of examples on this team that back up Ralph Krueger's statement there, so I liked what he said there. I don't know how you figure that out to make the guys more mentally strong, but if he can do that, it's a positive, and you might see a difference next year.
Yeah, a lot of guys are in that negative culture of losing mindset. So until you start winning, I really don't think that I think that's going to be the ultimate, recipe for success is them just being able to win games. And that will kind of change that mental mindset of them believing that they can get over that hump.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, if that might be the only way, it probably is the only way. So hopefully it'll happen because, yeah, there is some players here that Risto is one of them. You heard it in his interview this year. I mean, he was pretty entertaining, but a lot of what he said was a pretty good embodiment of a weak mental player who's just been here for so long that it's worn on him, and I don't know if he'll ever recover from it while in Buffalo.
Yep, unless the team starts to win. So last few things from Ralph Krueger here. I wanted to bring this up because Austin has, talked about his displeasure and misuse of Dominic Cahoon since he came to Buffalo at the trade deadline. They asked him about Dominic Cahoon. He says, Dominic is very smart, stepped in right away and fit in like a glove. We are excited about his future as a center and a winger. Strong cultural and athletic fit into our team, Austin. What do you think of that?
Couple things. Yeah, I mean, he is probably one of the few Sabres that is, a mentally strong player. He came from Chicago and Pittsburgh, two really. I know Chicago has been on the downhill lately, but those two are probably the two of the teams that you think of as the perfect example of how to run a franchise since 2010. They've been two of the best franchises, so
Sustained
I do
success.
agree with that. Yeah, I do agree with that, but the center and the winger thing made me laugh because, I mean, he never played center for the Sabres. So, I mean, if you're excited for him as a center, why didn't you use him as a center? I mean, who knows? Maybe he would have got games at center if the season kept going, but as of right now, it's just like, all right, if you think he's a center or a winger, he can't be both. You can't be both in the NHL. You have to pick one, and if you think he can be both, you at least try him out at both. I don't know. That's one of those few things about Ralph that just makes me cringe.
Reinhardt, too, would have been nice to try him out at center, too.
Yeah,
but
it would have.
But I just thought that quote was funny that I mentioned center and winger, which Cahoon did not play any of center this year. And then Ralph Krueger ends the press conference by saying, keeping our expectations always on the table. So talks about open communication with the players and how they always are honest about what the expectations are of themselves and others on the team, and how they're going to get better through this offseason and into next season. So that was basically it for Ralph Krueger's 48-minute press conference, Austin. What did you just think of it as a whole, and did you really take anything from it that made you believe that he is going to get this team turned around next year?
That's where it comes into it, right? I mean, with these press conferences, did I take anything? I thought Ralph's was good. He didn't say a lot of anything that made you scratch your head, really. But it's the players' press conferences that really are more telling about Ralph than Ralph's was. I mean, when you listen to the players' press conferences, that's what makes you believe that Ralph is the guy here, just because of how the players talked about him. Mm-hmm. Ralph comes off as a very smart guy. He's a really good communicator. That's what you take away every time he talks. But he's not an arrogant man. He doesn't talk about himself very often. So it's when you hear others talk about Ralph that you realize, okay, this guy is probably, he is the guy. I don't know if he's the guy skill wise, but he is the guy to get the most out of this team mentally, because they all respect him and think very highly of him.
Absolutely. So that was basically it for Jason Botterill and head coach Ralph Krueger. Again, it was about an hour and a half worth of press conference information, and we broke it down for you both in a combined half an hour segment. So I got to give myself a pat on the back for that one. And we did you guys a solid out there for you listeners. Instead of having to go through and listen to that, we basically just summed it up for you and gave our our objective thoughts on the GM Jason Botterill and head coach Ralph Krueger's end of season press conference thoughts there.
Yeah. We did a really good job there. I mean, like you said, Botterill's was 38, Krueger's was 45. That's a lot of press conference to listen to for just two guys talking. So you did a really good job of getting in those quotes, and I recommend that anyone who listens to this podcast, you pretty much don't have to go back and rewatch those if you want to, because we touched on everything that needed to be touched on.
Exactly. That's why we're here for you. We go through listening to Jason Botterill talk about standpoints and situations for an hour and a half for you guys to be able to recap it for you on the show and give you good information back towards that way. So we'll take our last commercial break on the show today, and we'll come back and talk about what the players talked about, which is what everybody wants to hear. So we'll be right back here on the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. The Blue Line Diner is Niagara's leading breakfast restaurant. Great food, great service, and where else can you see one of the NHL's greatest players having coffee and conversation with patrons? Of course, Marcel Dion Inc. is located directly next door, and Marcel is always in and out of the restaurant talking to the kids and the fans that walk through the doors. Open Tuesday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. 289-296-8785, the Blue Line Diner, located on Montrose Road, Niagara Falls. Simply Fit Health Club, real 24-hour access, 7 days a week. Located at 6595 Drummond Road, Niagara Falls. A clean, modern facility with top-of-the-line equipment, a friendly and non-judgmental environment, free Wi-Fi, ample parking, and more. Come in and tour their facility anytime during their office hours, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, Saturday 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Sunday 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Don't hesitate to stop in. No appointment necessary. They take pride in helping their members reach their health and fitness goals at their convenience and for the best possible price. For only $9.99 bi-weekly, members will get access to the state-of-the-art facility any day, anytime. What are you waiting for? At Simply Fit, there are no excuses, only results. Come see for yourself, 289-296-9535, or info at simplyfithealthclub.com. Simply Fit Health Club. Mick and Angelo's, Niagara Falls' premier sports kitchen and bar. We're all about food, friends, and fun. Catch the game with us and grab a delicious bite to eat while enjoying a cold beer. Bus trips to sporting events, live music performances, and sports pools throughout the year. Open daily 11 a.m. to midnight and 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. Mick and Angelo's, Niagara Falls' premier sports kitchen and bar. Canadian Wrestling Figure Store. Check out their website at cwf.ecwid.com for the best selection in Canada for WWE Elites, Basics, and exclusive action figures. Free Canada-wide shipping on any order over $200. Enter the code ARMCHAIR at checkout so they know that we sent you to receive 10% off your order. Once again, that's Canadian Wrestling Figure Store at cwf.ecwid.com. Attention employers! Finding the right candidate to meet your hiring needs requires more than just posting an advertisement and waiting for a suitable candidate to apply. Let the Niagara Employment Help Center save you valuable time and money by making your hiring process easier. Free job postings, fill job vacancies quickly and efficiently, access to a bank of potential employees, reduce employment costs, all candidates will be pre-screened, job trials and placement incentives, and financial assistance may be applicable to offset the cost of training. Again, that's Niagara Employment Help Center, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road, Niagara Falls. www.ehc.on.ca. Nestled in the heart of beautiful Ridgeway, Ontario, the Ridge Film House offers up films celebrating diversity, integrity, and pure entertainment. Join us for a quaint movie-going experience complete with an in-house bar, luxury seating, and carefully curated films. Join us for a cinematic experience that focuses on comfort and quality. Our films are carefully selected to fit our specific mandate, screening films that the larger cineplexes won't. Each month, our 10x15 screens show you the best in independent, foreign, classic, and second-run films. The Ridge Film House is also available for private screenings, parties, and festivals. Come and discover hidden gems or rediscover the classics one more time. Located at 320 Ridge Road in Ridgeway, www.ridgefilmhouse.com, or call 289-303-8367 for availability and showtimes. The Ridge Film House, a truly unique movie-going experience. J&L Flooring is a Niagara-based specialty flooring and design company. They take great pride in providing elite customer service and support. They are a specialty flooring and decor boutique shop with a beautiful showroom, great pricing, and a wide variety and truly unique selection of products. All their products are environmentally friendly and responsibly produced, so you can feel great about your flooring choices. Their goal as a local business is to build authentic relationships based on honesty and integrity that they foster with respect and authenticity, offering unique and wide range of quality products presented by a knowledgeable and patient team. They connect with their customers to simplify the process to make their life easier and to make their homes beautiful. Visit them at 4424 Montrose Road, Niagara Falls, or find out more at jnlflooring.com. Open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 5 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. 905-358-3299 J&L Flooring. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill is located on the top of Clifton Hill and just a 5-minute walk from the majestic Niagara Falls. It is conveniently nestled in the heart of the tourist district. A family-owned and operated business, the Spicy Olive opened its doors in 2003 and has since been established as an authentic and unique Italian restaurant and bar. Its rustic ambiance and time-worn finishing provide a warm and inviting dining experience. Offering an array of delicious dishes, they specialize in authentic Italian cuisine, homemade sauces, fresh ingredients, and consistently provide a strong foundation on which they build their menu. As night falls, the Spicy Olive shifts to a lively lounge where dancing, martinis, and live music come together to make a perfect evening. Let Spicy Olive host your next function, birthday, private event, bridal, or baby shower. For more than 15 years, they have served not only their dedicated locals, but customers from all over the world with authentic Italian food and only the best in live entertainment. Located at 5026 Center Street, just off the historic Clifton Hill in Niagara Falls. They're open daily at noon till 10 p.m. and till 2 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. Call 905-371-2323 for reservations and special events. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill. You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network. All right, guys, welcome back to the last segment of today's Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Cappy and Austin back with you here. We discussed the GM and coaches' thoughts in the last segment on their end-of-year press conferences. Now it's time to discuss the players, and there's a lot of good stuff here, a lot of really just brutally honest quotes from a lot of these players about their feelings about what has gone on here, Austin. And you know what? It's maybe it's a good thing that these players are being able to come out and express what's on their mind, because obviously what has gone on here is not acceptable, and for them to be saying that, you don't want them to act like they want to lose and not be frustrated with how things have been going here. It's been a long 9 years, and for a lot of these players, they haven't experienced what it's like to be in a winning culture as of yet with this organization. Yeah,
it's been really tough. I mean, if we're just talking about most of the players on this team, it's been a tough 7 years. You know, Risto, Larson, they've been here the longest now out of anybody. They have yet to even sniff playoff hockey. Risto's interview was pretty telling that he's been here for 7 years, and it's just completely beaten him down mentally. Granted, he hasn't done himself any favors with some of the performances he's put forth, but you can tell that he doesn't really he doesn't know what the future is for himself in Buffalo, but he also doesn't know what the future is for the Sabres as an organization, because he said we've had a bright future, but we've had a bright future for 7 years, so I don't know when the future is supposed to come. So you can just tell that it's been tough, and that a lot of these players, especially the ones that have been here for a long time, they're kind of at their wits' end, and I don't blame a lot of them for being like that.
Yep, absolutely. So, since you brought up Rasmus Ristolainen, he definitely had the most interesting press conference out of any player. So let's start with him first. Like I said, 7 years on this team since he was drafted 8th overall by the Sabres. He's been through 3 regimes now with this team and this organization, and it just seems like it's really taken a toll on him, and he's never been shy to express his opinion on the ice or off the ice. So here's a bit of Rasmus Ristolainen, which was probably the most interesting and telling press conference out of any of the players, GMs, coaches that were able to do the Zoom call. So here it is. I've been in Buffalo 7 years and we haven't won. So yeah, I hope we're done losing. I feel like Ralph really helped a lot and our system played more of a unit, but I'm really hungry and wanted to be in the playoffs. So it better be next year. is what Rasmus Ristolainen says. So obviously really frustrated, and you know what, there was talks that he wanted the trade out of Buffalo, but you know what, it seemed like Ralph Krueger really changed his mindset, and he enjoyed playing for Ralph Krueger. So what do you think of just that in general, and getting him to buy into this team once again, which it seemed like he had shut off from this organization at some point?
Yeah, I mean, again, this was another very telling, glowing endorsement for Ralph Krueger. I mean, Ristolainen, with those reports that came out that he wants a fresh start somewhere else, I don't blame him. I mean, everyone thought he would be one of the players to get traded. They held on to him. I mean, it's clear that somebody in this front office group, whether it's the GMs or the owners, like Ristolainen a lot and maybe overvalue him to a point. But he said how much he appreciates Krueger, and how Krueger, you could tell. Like, I think it was when they had that 9-1-2 start, report came out saying Ristolainen is extremely happy in Buffalo with the way like Ralph Krueger has come in and, you know, turned things around, and just how different it seems with Ralph at the helm. Of course, the results ended up being the exact same, so who knows how long that honeymoon little period lasted with Ristolainen, but he thought highly of Krueger, and you know, he's pretty much, I think you'll get into it when you say the quotes, but he said whether it's here in Buffalo or somewhere else, he knows he can be a winner, because he's never been on a winning team, even in Finland. You know what I mean? So it's been a tough hockey career for Ristolainen, who is a talented hockey player, but losing just seems to follow him. And I think that maybe this would be the summer that he does get moved, and he also wouldn't be surprised if that happened based off some things that he said in that press conference.
Yeah, so I'll go over some of that here. We weren't even close again. I want to win, whether that's in Buffalo, like you just mentioned, or somewhere else. I think changes need to happen. If the changes needs to happen, I expect to be one of the first players traded out as part of the business side of it. Buffalo is home for me, and I've enjoyed my time here. So that sounds like a player that expects that he's going to be out the door.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly wonder how long he's expected to be traded, to be honest. I think at the latest, last summer was the summer that he pretty much thought, okay, I'm probably gone. And he didn't get traded. The trade never occurred. And now with this comment, I mean, Ryan O'Reilly said he lost his love for the game and was traded. Ristolainen just flat out said, I'm pretty sure I'm traded. So I don't know. Like like I said, he said Buffalo's his home. I don't think it would completely, like, I don't think he'd be miserable if he was back here next year, but he's smart enough to realize what we as Sabres fans and what as Sabres media and even national media have been saying for a year or two now is, hey, Buffalo has a boatload of defensemen. Ristolainen is the type of defenseman that a lot of GMs still value in the league. Maybe move him out and get some help. I mean, at this point, I don't think you're going to get an elite top six forward, but I do think that, you know, you can get something for it. And it's probably a move that needs to happen based off of the stuff that Ristolainen said. I've been here for 7 years. We haven't won. Maybe just clear out not the dead weight, but clear out those guys that have been here for that long and see if some roster turnover helps. So, I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but he expects to be gone. I expect him to be gone. I think most of us expect him to be gone. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Everybody except Ralph Krueger, apparently.
Yeah.
He goes to say, we have too many really big lows, but we put everything together and young guys can take the next step. It will work out. I don't know what a winning culture is, so I don't know what really needs to be done. I haven't experienced it even before I got to Buffalo. I don't think about the trade rumors. I don't care about that. I've been training for 10, 11 weeks now. It's been like a hobby for me. We've been saying the bright future for 7 years. When is it going to be the future now? And he finishes off by saying, Ralph just wants to get to know you. We needed a coach like him and wish he would have come sooner than he did.
Again, very, very telling about Ralph Krueger. I mean, for a player like Ristolainen, who has been here for 7 years and has experienced nothing but disappointment, you can just tell how much he values Ralph Krueger as a person, saying, yeah, I wish he was here earlier, because although this year sucked, and he even said it sucked, you can tell that it was a little bit different for him, most of the players seem to think that they're in good hands with Ralph as a coach. So very telling there.
So that was the end of Rasmus Ristolainen's press conference. A lot of good stuff there. A lot of brutally honest things that he said there about his plans for if he expects to be on this team moving forward, and what the last 7 years have been like here. We've been very frustrated about how this team has not progressed, but he was encouraged by what Ralph Krueger brought to this team as a head coach, and basically allowed him to stay around for another year at least than he had expected, like you said, with him wanting a fresh start going even before last year. So we'll have to wait and see if the Ralph Krueger influence keeps Rasmus Ristolainen on this team moving forward. Moving on here, we've got let's do the captain, Jack Eichel. So Jack Eichel, obviously, every year since he's been in the league has improved with this team. His point totals have gone up each year, but not just that. His maturity as a leader and his defensive game has just been taken to another level this last year with this team, and showing that why he is one of the top players in the NHL and why he should be in the Hart Trophy consideration with where this team would be without him playing every night. So with Jack Eichel here, he goes, first question, what do you want to improve? Simple one-word answer, winning.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it. Is he wrong?
No.
No.
For a guy of his caliber, and for a guy that's and my dad and I have discussed this. My dad actually watched the Eichel press conference with me. Just said, how can you blame the guy? He's never lost anywhere in his career. He's used to winning. He's not used to being a loser and not making the playoffs for 5 years. So it's got to be very difficult for a competitor and a winner like Jack Eichel to be dealing with what he's been dealing with in Buffalo since he's been drafted.
Yeah, I mean, this was a kid who, as a freshman at BU, won the Hobey Baker and was a very unfortunate own goal let in by O'Connor, his goalie at BU, away from winning a national championship as a freshman. So, I mean, yeah, he's won everywhere he's been, and this is completely different. Obviously he doesn't suck, so it's the team around him that has kind of let Jack down. I know there's a lot of players who a lot of people who like to pile on Jack and say, well, he could do this, he could do that, but it's beside the point right now. He has been in Buffalo for 5 years. They have not made the playoffs. They haven't sniffed the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, if they come out next year and win and make the playoffs, all those people who are thinking, I think Jack Eichel might want out of Buffalo. Nah, I think he just wants to win. So if he starts winning next year in Buffalo, that tune is completely going to change. They're going to be like, oh, Jack Eichel leads Buffalo. You know what I mean? So I think people need to stop with that. He just wants to win, and at this point, I don't blame him. It's been 5 years for him. It's been a lot longer for some of these players and for all of us fans. But
absolutely,
I don't blame Jack at all for his tone and his displeasure with the organization, because ownership in front office, they have failed Jack Eichel. Botterill didn't draft Jack Eichel. Obviously, it was Tim Murray, but much like Tim Murray, Botterill has failed to put. I mean, he brought in Jeff Skinner, so whatever, but he failed to build a team around him, not get him a player here and there. They have failed to build a team around him, and I'm sure they know. Elliot Friedman said that everything that Jack Eichel said, it's shocking to hear him talk like that, but it's not shocking for the organization. So I think that the team knows how unhappy he is with what's happened, but we'll get into it later. He's not unhappy with the coaching staff. So if you're not unhappy with the coaching staff, but you're unhappy with the way the team has been going, kind of only points in one direction as to who he's unhappy with.
Yep.
So we'll see. We'll see.
I mean, he does basically hold the keys to this organization. Like, he is the guy that they paid the top dollar for. He is the captain, the leader of this team. He is the franchise player, the cornerstone player that they have desperately needed to have, over the last few decades with this organization. And for when he talks, the people have to listen. And at the same time, you know what? It does get overblown, I think, by the national media just for sound bites and clickbait and things like that to say that he obviously is unhappy. Everybody wants to win. Jeff Skinner has a quote later that I find very telling, but it's just obviously he wants to win. As you don't want your winner, your leader of your franchise being okay with losing. That would just be, that you should really rethink of that guy being the leader and the franchise player of your team if he was, accepting of where this organization has been over the last 5 years.
Yeah, and what people forget is that he still has 6 years left on his contract. Like, he signed an 8-year deal after his entry-level deal. So he's still in Buffalo for a while. Even if he doesn't want to be here, which again, if they have another bad year, then I'll start to talk about that. But he's got 6 more years in Buffalo. He's very good. He likes the city. He likes the fan base. He likes a lot of his teammates. He just wants to win. And you know what? Mm-hmm. It's up to the GM to help him win, because he has done pretty much everything he can. He can't really ask for much more from Jack Eichel, so I can understand his sentiment and why he's disappointed and why he feels the way that he feels. It's now time for the team, and not even the team, it's time for the front office to build this team around Jack Eichel. It's about 5 years too late. They should have started building around him 5 years ago when they drafted him, but you still have time to do it, so you have to start doing it, because the NHL isn't the NBA where you can get by with one superstar and some very good players around him. You need a whole team. You don't need 4 or 5 guys. You need 10 guys that can help make this team better, and they don't have that right now. They have a few, but they need to keep getting better.
I found it interesting that Jake McCabe compared him to the Last Dance documentary, and Jack was flattered to be compared to a player like Michael Jordan and leader like him, but unfortunately Jack says that he doesn't have the winning pedigree that Michael Jordan had. But for players to compare his attitude to Michael Jordan, I think that shows what kind of a player Jack Eichel is. And like you said, one player can't make it in the NHL. It's not the NBA. You can't just rely on one player. So they need to build that team around him, and it starts down the middle with giving him some help, with a second line center that is NHL caliber. Moving on here, like we mentioned here, loved Ralph Krueger as a person and a coach. He said, "It was a pleasure learning from a guy like him."
Yeah, I mean, when your captain and franchise player says that about a first-year head coach, that's a big sign. It's a big sign. It's like I've said, it's pretty obvious that this whole team does see Ralph Krueger in a very positive light, and that's a good thing. You want the team to think that your coach is the guy to be leading this franchise. You know what I mean? So that's good. That's a good thing. But like I said, if it's not the head coach that is getting bad reviews, like, obviously they're not going to call out their GM, but if they're saying these positive things about the coach and how they think he's the guy, but they're still saying that the direction of the team, it's frustrated me. They're kind of only they're not really given a much imagination. It's they're not happy with the front office, which I don't blame them. They shouldn't be happy with the front office. But
go ahead.
This has been the first time, I think, in a long time that I've gotten that opinion from players, that you basically know they're saying the front office needs to be better without actually saying it.
And it's funny you mentioned that. Next quote: "What does this lineup need? Not my job. My job is on the ice. Need to get better and really deep. Toughness would help in this discussion."
That quote might not go over well with some hockey fans, because a lot of hockey fans seem to think that toughness means fighting, which it does not. The Sabres probably do need to get a little bit tougher, you know what I mean? Ralph talked about it, mentally tough. They need to get tougher in that aspect. Mental toughness is, in fact, toughness, and I think that, when you look at it, not saying he would make a huge difference, but imagine Jack Eichel had a lot of success with Evander Kane. I know we had to trade Evander Kane because we didn't want to pay him that much. I wouldn't have paid him that much, but that type of player would go a long way. A tough, hard-nosed player that puts up offense. You know what I mean? Like a Evander Kane or a Cam Atkinson or like that type of player
with a high motor that isn't afraid to go into the areas that need to be had. Yeah,
like there's not a lot of power forwards left in the NHL, but if you could get a modern power forward in the NHL right now who can score those goals, that would go a long way to helping the Sabres, because they do have skill. They do have a lot of skill on their offense. They have Skinner, they have Eichel, they have Olofsson, they have Reinhart, they have Johansson. Like, they have the skill. They don't have. They're missing those 2 or 3 things. If Jack thinks it's toughness, I mean, they could probably look to add that. But like you said, they're missing that NHL caliber second line center. So if they can go out and finally acquire that, it slides other players into their correct role, whether that's Johansson going down and being your third line center or Johansson sliding over to a permanent winger. You know what I mean? Getting that one thing that they're missing, it won't get them over the top, but it'll definitely set them up better. It'll push those players into their correct roles, and it'll allow more time for a guy like Casey Middlestat and Dylan Cousins to develop without having a huge amount of pressure on them. So we'll see. We'll see how the GM attacks this offseason, but when your star player calls you out without literally calling you out, your hot seat gets even hotter.
And here we go again with that. Nice segue. Listen, I'm fed up with the losing. Been a tough 5 years. I'm a competitor. I want to win. I want to win the Stanley Cup every time I step on the ice. We took a step, and it was a pleasure working with Ralph, so he mentions Ralph once again. But no, I'm not in a great place with how things have gone, and it's worn on me. That's your leader, captain, franchise player, Jack Eichel, cornerstone of your franchise, talking like that.
That was the literal quote right there that when I saw and heard from Jack, that was me saying, yeah, okay, he just called out Jason Botterill. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. A lot of people think when their star player calls out the GM, it's a bad thing. No, it's not a bad thing. He just said how much he loved Ralph. He just said the last 5 years has worn on him. He's only been with Botterill for 3 years, so I mean, obviously, it's not all on Jason Botterill, but that was to me him saying, ownership, front office, wake up. You have the coach. I love Ralph, but I don't like what's happened the last 5 years. This year especially probably worn on Jack and the team because this was a year where the fans pretty much revolted against the owners. You know, this year especially wasn't a good year for the Buffalo Sabres. So I think that coupled with Jack's end of the year press conference, hopefully that serves as a wake up message to the owners and Jason Botterill. And I hope it does some good because, you know, I did believe in Jason Botterill a lot and I believed in the Pagulas a lot. This summer will literally go a long way to saying, okay, they listen to not only their fans, but they listen to their star player, and it could be a big turning point for the Buffalo Sabres. Hopefully, it's a turning point for the positive this summer.
Exactly. It was one win for you guys being in the playoffs, says Mike Harrington. So he asked Jack Eichel that. Jack says it adds to the frustration a lot, and then just a long, awkward pause.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's a Mike Harrington, so there's always those long, awkward pauses from the players because they probably look at him like, did you really just ask me that?
Then he goes on to say, our goal was to make a 16-team playoff, not a 24-team playoff. So I love that from Jack. Says, like, not making excuses and, you know, complaining that they weren't in it. It doesn't matter. We expected to be in a 16-team playoff and not a 24-team playoff, so we didn't deserve to be there anyway. Yeah,
it's just more telling with how not displeased, because displeased makes it seem like he's a prima donna. He's not happy with the way things have gone, and I'm sure if he was in the 24-team playoff, he'd be happy about it. I mean, how could you not be? You'd get to play hockey and have a chance to go after the Stanley Cup, but he's not happy. He wanted to be in the actual playoffs, and I'm all right with that. That's the mentality that you want your star player to have. So nothing wrong with being unhappy. And I mean, I'm sure it doesn't help that you missed the 24-team playoff by, you know, a couple points. Obviously, that's probably going to add more to the frustration, but you know, the goal was to make the 16-team playoff, not the 24-team. So I'm all right with that quote.
And lastly, they asked him about referencing guys like Matthews and McDavid having success, guys that are, you know, compared to him, guys in his draft class, guys he plays with in the U.S. national team. I played 5 years and haven't made the playoffs. Of course, it's going to be frustrating. So, obviously for him, seeing McDavid only had the 1 year of playoffs. We'll have another chance here going into the second one when the season resumes. And obviously, Matthews has had playoff success. Well, they haven't had playoff success in Toronto, let's get that right. But they have made the playoffs in Toronto. So, obviously, Matthews and McDavid have experienced it more than Jack has. So, in their short careers, and obviously that's another reason why Jack is frustrated, because he sees all these young players around the league, you know, being able to make the playoffs and having opportunities to go and win the Stanley Cup. So I think from his level of maturity, how much he's grown over the last 5 years, and as a leader of this team, and the pride he has for his team and as a leader himself, obviously he's going to be frustrated with seeing other guys around him having those opportunities and he hasn't.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we are media, so we understand why those questions are asked. But on the flip side, I hate when those questions are asked because, I mean, what else is he going to say? obviously he's upset that players he's compared to are making the playoffs and he's not. But, I mean, it sucks. I mean, when you look at Toronto, it pains me to say it, but Dubas and Lamoriello built that team properly, at least to have regular season success. They obviously haven't had the playoff success, but they built that team in a good way. They built the offense. They don't have the defense, but they built the offense properly, and it works in the regular season. They at least get to the playoffs. So it's painful as a fan, so I can't imagine how painful it is for Jack Eichel to see those teams gear up for the playoffs on a yearly basis. Obviously, Edmonton's a little bit different, but they're at least going to be in the playoffs for the second time in McDavid's career.
Yep, he just wants a sniff. He just wants that chance to have an opportunity to go for the Stanley Cup, just to get in the playoffs, and it's, for a guy like him, I understand why he's frustrated in that regard. And at the end of the press conference, he thanked the media and gave his well wishes. So just goes to show you that Jack Eichel really does care about this organization and the community of Buffalo, and even the media members who some good, some bad, and just showing how much he has matured over especially the last few years as a leader and the basically the face of this franchise. So I was really pleased with Jack Eichel's press conference. A lot of good stuff there, a lot of brutally honest thoughts, but also a lot of talking about his encouraging talks with Ralph, and talking about the other players, and just talking about basically just how motivated he is to show everybody why we need to take the next step, and I'm tired of losing, and why what drives him and fuels him so much during this offseason to try to become a winner and a team that is looked at as a contender and not the the laughing stock of the NHL anymore. He's not going to take that.
Yeah, and like you said, he shouldn't take that. And again, he can't do it himself. He's pretty much done it himself this entire time. We all know what this team would be without Jack Eichel. I mean, do we even need to say it? I mean, they'd probably, I don't even want to think about it, but
yeah.
So I mean, I think the people like to say stop blaming the coaching staffs and all this stuff, but I think this is a time where you can't put the blame on Jack Eichel, and you can't really put the blame on some of the players on this roster, guys like Larson, Girgensons, Evan Rodriguez, who was here. You can't put the blame on them because those players were never really supposed to be impact players in the NHL. So, can you put the blame on some of the players? Absolutely. The players have to perform better, but with this regime, it's been a case of, what the moves you have made and the players you have acquired haven't done anything.
Yep.
And you haven't acquired the right players, but yet also the players you have acquired haven't really done anything. Cahoon looks like a nice player, so that's always positive. But, I mean, I hate talking about it because I hate living in the past, but Ryan O'Reilly's on this team. They're probably a playoff team.
They're definitely in the 2014 playoff.
Oh, for sure. But you know what I mean?
Yep.
I hate talking about the Ryan O'Reilly trade because people can debate about that. But the trade happened, deal with it, move on. It's over. But if he's here, yeah, let's face it, we're a playoff team.
Yep, and it's they just need to give Jack help everywhere, and players that are actually meant to play in certain roles, not being forced up a line than they should be playing, or playing wing or playing center when they should be playing wing. It's just guys playing in the right spots that are going to be able to contribute in those areas. That's all that Jack needs to get us to this next level.
Yeah, exactly.
Moving on from Jack Eichel here, we got two more to talk about here quickly. Rasmus Dahlin, obviously the cornerstone franchise defenseman, going on from Jack Eichel, the franchise centerman. So they have their two cornerstone pieces, the defenseman and the center on this team. Rasmus Dahlin, his second year in the league, starts off by saying, "It pisses me off to not be preparing to go back to North America like a lot of my Swedish buddies are to be preparing for the playoffs." So they're starting off hot. Dahlin's not happy either, so I like to see that. He said, "It's going to be a good summer. I've got a lot of time to prepare. I got to be better. We got to be a better hockey player. I've reflected a lot sitting up in the press box this year when I was injured, and I learned a lot. I want to use my shot a lot more and work on that. I'm a competitive guy. I want to strive to be the best. I've been working on my defensive side a lot. I want to be a two-way defenseman in this league. I'm motivated to prove what kind of young, exciting team we have here in Buffalo. We can go to and then it goes to a different quote asking about the pandemic. But just what are your thoughts on Dahlin there with those few quotes there talking about what he wants to work on with his shot, wants to be a two-way defenseman in the league, and how pissed off he is that he's not going to be coming back over here, and just how much he wants to improve himself and this team.
All extremely positive. I mean, Dahlin's only been here for 2 years, and he's still young where he's going to have that positive outlook no matter what. Obviously, you're glad he's pissed off. I mean, let's face it. What more? I mean, people, if you're getting picky, yeah, you could ask him to be a little bit better defensively, but he is the second most points ever by a teenage defenseman in the history of the NHL, only behind Phil Housley. He's a top overall pick. You can't ask for much more of Dahlin through his first 2 years. Playing defense in the league is hard. So, yeah, those are all positives for him, that you want to hear him say that he wants to get better defensively and that he wants to show how good this team can be. It was refreshing to hear. I mean, I know Dahlin went before Eichel, so obviously it was a little bit reverse order, but it was refreshing to hear that from Dahlin, and it's good to see that he is committed to being better defensively, because let's face it, it's probably the only thing he really needs to improve on. He's so dynamic offensively. Yep. You can't ask for much more of him there. So I mean, it's awesome to hear from Dahlin, and you're glad that he's pissed off, because I mean, at 20 years old, you might be like, hey, I'm still making $900,000 a year. It's fine. But no, he's not acting like that. He's angry and he's mad, and that's what you want to see from a player who, when you think about the position he plays and what is asked for defensemen and the talent that he has, when it's all said and done, he could be better than Jack Eichel. We don't know. We just, you know what I mean? It's good to hear that your two franchise players are angry and pissed off, but it's also nice to see that little positive outlook that Dahlin has, because whether it's that youthfulness that he has or it's just that's the type of person that he is, it was awesome. I think Dahlin didn't give you the quotable material that you liked, but everything that you heard from Rasmus Dahlin in his interview was good. You wanted to hear what you heard from him.
Exactly, and that's the thing we forget, is that he's 20 years old, defenseman playing in the NHL, which is very difficult. Probably one of the hardest things to do coming in as a young defenseman in this league, and like you said, the second highest point total for a teenage defenseman of all time, behind another Sabre, Phil Housley. So, you know what? I think for his level of maturity at only 20 years old, the sky's the limit for Rasmus Dahlin, and he's only going to continue to get better and, really mold himself into the cornerstone defenseman of this team going forward, and he's still got many years left to improve, and we've already seen glimpses of, how special of a player that he is, and even at a very young age, what kind of maturity level that he has, and it will only continue to grow.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you look at it, he turned 20 in April, so he played the whole year as a 19-year-old. So, I mean, the maturity that he has and the maturity that – I mean, I hate using the comparison, but just look at Victor Hedman, how late in his career he actually developed before he turned into the stud of a defenseman that he is. And you're already seeing amazing offensive production from Dahlin. So if he can keep that offensive production up and continue to develop his defensive game, I truly do believe the sky is the limit with Dahlin, with what he could be.
Absolutely. And lastly, he follows up on the shot question. It comes down to small things like how I shoot the puck like I did when I was 10 years old. I feel like I shoot harder now, so it's adjusting to that. So he's really trying to work on his shot as he realizes that he's getting older and stronger, and he's going to have to really work on that if he wants to really be the defenseman that he thinks that he can be. So I found it really intriguing that he talked about his shot a few times during that press conference, and how he wants to improve that aspect of his game and be that really lethal power play quarterback back there that they can rely on, not just to pass the puck and get the puck up in transition, but also be a guy that has to be really. Watched and game planned for his shot. So a guy that you can't take your eye off him in the defensive zone or the offensive zone is something that Dahlin really wants to be considered in this league as he continues to grow.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it earlier in the show, like their power play needs to get better. I think if you have a guy like Eichel, Olsen, who can both shoot, if Dahlin gets his shot to a point where his shot did get better as the year went on, you kind of saw it, he got more confident with it. But if he gets his shot better to the point where those three guys are working the puck at the top of the zone. If all three of them have a dangerous shot, we're like, we know Dahlin can shoot the puck, but if it gets to a point where goalies have to consistently worry about his shot from the point, that benefits the Sabres at 5-on-5, but it also does benefit their power play because then you have three guys with absolute lethal shots that you have to worry about. So I do like that he wants to work on his shot, because if you want to nitpick his offensive game, that's probably one thing that, he would need to improve on, is just being able to shoot the puck more consistently.
Yep. Garnering more attention in the offensive zone, I think, is the point I was trying to make here, is that, like you said, with Olofsson, Eichel, and, they want to have another guy for a possible shot that they have to worry about with Dahlin, and like you said, that was basically the biggest area of improvement, so at least he knows that that's something that he's going to be working on here in the offseason, and I'm really interested to see what that shot looks like when they come back and start playing again, and how he develops again going into a 20-year-old defenseman in the NHL, which is still incredible.
Yeah.
So, that was basically it for Rasmus Dahlin. So, moving on here, lastly to Jeff Skinner. And Skinner, obviously, the reason why I wanted to talk about him, just signed the big contract, had a great 40-goal season last year with the Sabres in his first year. Then this year, took a huge dive. Jeff Skinner had nowhere close to the production that he had in year one with the Sabres. He only had, I believe it was 14 goals. Yeah, 14 goals, 9 assists in 59 games with a minus 22 rating. A lot of people talk about how he wasn't played with Jack Eichel through most of the season. And you know what? In his press conference, he really stood up to that and said it really didn't matter who he was playing with. So let's get into this here with Jeff Skinner. He says the season is like a cooking recipe. You're always trying to tweak it. A lot of things go into it. You should choose another profession if you like losing. So there you go. That was the quote that I was waiting to talk about. Jeff Skinner says it. If you like losing, then you shouldn't be in this game. So very telling from Jeff Skinner there. He goes on to say, I don't look at playing less ice time with Jack being the only reason for his dramatic drop in goals this year. I'd like to finish a lot more of those opportunities, especially in the tight games we had this year where we needed a goal. The conversion rate has to be better. A lot of things that goes into that, as opposed to one or two sentence answers.
Yeah, that is actually a very good quote from Jeff. I mean, obviously, again, if you like losing, get the heck out of hockey, because you shouldn't be, or pro sports in general, really in anything in life. If you like settling for nothing, you shouldn't be doing that. But, there's no sugarcoating it for Jeff. I mean, it was a disappointing year, especially given the contract that he just signed. I mean, 14 goals is obviously not good enough. At times I do think that he wasn't used really well by Krueger. Again, something we like to talk about. But it's not all on Ralph. It's not all on Jeff. But it was a combination of both. He was getting shots. They weren't going in. His career shooting percentage, usually that's what he ends up shooting on a regular season. This year, I think it was a little bit lower than that. So there is some curve grading there, but he needs to be better. Jeff Skinner needs to be better. He knows that. He needs to be better away from Jack. He knows that when you're making $9 million, you can't rely on one player to boost your production. When you're making that much money, you need to be driving the play. One thing that again, this goes more to Ralph than it does to Jeff. He was actually really good with Johan Larsson this year. That's when he kind of had a little bit of a hot streak, but they kind of, much like this coaching staff did all year, when they saw something working, they only stuck with it for a little bit. Then they just went away from it. So hopefully it's a good mix next year. Hopefully Jeff is back to producing at his normal level, and hopefully he is getting used a little bit differently, because I think if he's used a little bit differently, you might see a little bit of increase in his production, but he also needs to get back to his true goal scoring form. Is he always going to be a 40 goal scorer? No, I don't think so, but I think he can consistently hit the 30 goal mark, and that's where he needs to be in order to be effective at $9 million a year.
Exactly, and that's why they brought him back, to be that guy, as they've been lacking somebody like that to play with Jack Eichel, or to be on this team to score 30 goals. It's really something that they've been missing, and when they brought him in, it was like a breath of fresh air when he had the 40-goal season, and he needs to be able to just bury a lot more of those opportunities that he had. He discussed that he had a lot of opportunities and just needs to find that way to just put those pucks in the net and come up with those big timely goals like the Sabres pay him to be that sharpshooter on this team, which looks like Victor Olofsson is now trying to become another one of those players for the Sabres, and they're going to need more clutch goal scoring. So it's not going to have to just come from Jeff Skinner and Victor Olofsson, but they have to pull their weight as well as guys that are heavily relied upon, and in Skinner's pace, in Skinner's situation, he is very much paid in a generous way to score goals for this team, and that is why he's paid $9 million, is to put the puck in the net for this team.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're supposed to be a premier goal scorer when you're making $9 million. We know Skinner has that capability. This year just seemed to be nothing went right for Skinner. He wasn't shooting the puck great. He was getting the chances. They weren't going in, and he wasn't really getting used the way that you should be using a $9 million player.
Exactly. So he goes on to say this quote I start here: frustration and disappointment are two words that I think to sum up the season. So, yep, you got that right.
Yeah.
He goes on to say, we got off to a good start, then it got into a lull, which made the West Coast trip a situation where we needed to win. Again, we've talked about that West Coast trip, tirelessly on this podcast about how disappointing it was for them to not come away with any points there against some really tough teams that really proved if they were going to be able to be a playoff contender or not. He said, games are a lot tighter than later in the year than just gaining more experience from that is key for us. We aren't where we want to be. It's time for everyone to take another step, and it's time for us to start reaching those expectations. So that was it from Jeff Skinner.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way he ended that. It's time for everyone to step up. And again, maybe I'm just reading too much into it, but when you say time for everyone, to me, he's not just talking about the players. He's talking about everyone within the organization. Everyone in this organization needs to step up to get this team to where it needs to be. Because when you have the building blocks that you do, the team should be better. So, again, we'll see what happens, but this is literally the biggest year for Jason Botterill, obviously. But I think it's the biggest year to show for the Pegulas to show that, hey, Buffalo is not a laughingstock, and we are competent owners, and we do care about our fan base, and we do care about putting a winning product on the ice, because right now it just doesn't seem like any of that is the case.
I really think this is a make or break year for this organization going into 2021. I think if they go through another year where they aren't in the playoffs, I think you're going to see a drastic amount of changes. I think we would all expect to see a lot of players traded off this team. We don't ever want to get to the point where we think Jack Eichel will be traded off this team. I don't ever want to get to that point. But if we continue to lose, and we lose for a sixth year straight of Jack Eichel's career and 10 straight years of not making the playoffs, I think there's going to be a lot of major changes made to this organization, and this really is a big year for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's face it, this year, I don't know, me at least, was I expecting playoffs? I mean, I was hopeful. Before the year started, I was hopeful, but I would have taken a competent year. Going into next year, I'm not looking for a competent year. Next year literally has to be playoffs or bust for Buffalo, because, yeah, like you said, you're when your star players running out of steam with the way things have gone, you have to show him immediately that we care about putting a winning product on the ice, and we are the team. We are the organization that can take you to the Stanley Cup, Jack. Because let's face it, as for right now, when the Pegulas bought the team, their sole existence was to win a Stanley Cup. You haven't even touched the playoffs, so it's time. There's no more excuses.
No, exactly, and it really is like we talk about, the media overblowing things, but I mean, I just think it's going to reach a breaking point with this organization, with what's going on with the front office, the coaching staff, the players, the fan base. If they miss the playoffs again for a 10th straight year, I don't even want to think about that. But again, that's why these players talk about going into next year is, losing is not an option. We need to take that next step to the playoffs. Everybody has that mindset going into next year that losing is not acceptable. I'm glad that players like Jeff Skinner, Ristolainen, Jack Eichel, Dahlin that we've talked about on the show today, and even Ralph Krueger and Jason Botterill to a certain extent, although he's not as animated as the players are, that they are not content and are not okay with what the losing is. They know they have a good, talented, young core group of players here that needs to take that next step, but at the same time, they need to analyze that things need to be changed. They need to bring in some players. They need to be open to making some big moves with this organization, and with the cap flexibility that they will have, we'll see what the cap actually is next year. But there are things that need to happen this offseason to put them in a position to be successful next year. And like you said, that starts with the front office and the coaching staff putting players in the right spots to succeed.
Yeah, like, again, we've stressed it many times on this episode already. It's truly make or break for the front office, and it might be. We've already saw a fan revolt, but I think it is truly finally playoffs or bust for the Sabres. There's no more, like, we'll take progress. It's truly playoffs or bust, and I think we've already seen a mass exodus of season ticket holders. But if there's not a successful product on the ice next year, we could be looking at some dark times for the Sabres, and I just pray it doesn't get to that.
Another suffering rebuild, as Darcy Regier, that quote continues to be brought up by Sabres media and fans and all that. It's again, we try to be optimistic here on this show with the Sabres. We both love the Sabres to death, but at the same time, we have to remain objective and honest with where this organization is and where we think it should be and where we expect it to be when we've been, in the lottery conversation for the last 9 years with this organization. And through 3 general managers and 3 head coaches, it just seems like, when is that time going to come, like all the players say? And what, we have to look forward to the draft lottery on, I guess, June 27th is the first installment of the draft lottery. So, what? We could be coming back here talking after the draft lottery and saying, the Sabres are the first overall pick. We're going to pick Alexis Lafreniere. And we could be having a completely different mindset. So it really is, if the Sabres get 1 or 2 really big additions here in this offseason, we could have a whole different outlook and just mindset of this organization and the fan base of where they think they can be if the right moves are made and if the chips fall for the Sabres with draft lottery positioning and things like that, and if trade pieces and trade opportunities come available. I think this team really, they have a lot of good pieces that a lot of teams would love to have on this team, a franchise centerman like Jack Eichel, a franchise defenseman, Rasmus Dahlin, but they just need to put all of that together, and we'll have to wait and see, after, I'm sure we'll come back and talk about the draft lottery results after the 27th, but it really is just 1 or 2 major things away from us having a completely different outlook on this complete organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this draft lottery is going to be that first little stepping stone as to, okay, you know what I mean? Like, if things go well and Buffalo ends up with 1, 2, or 3, we're looking at maybe. Depends on who they pick. I love Quentin Byfield, but I don't think he'll be in the NHL next year. I think he'll have to go back down. That's just my personal opinion. But if they get 1, 2, or 3, we're looking at that first instance of positivity that will probably put you and I into the let's go. This actually could be different this year. Or we're picking 8th and we're like, okay, good. You're going to get a solid prospect, but that doesn't do anything for me right now. So, yeah, the 26th, 27th, that's going to be the first stepping stone for this offseason. It'll give Botterill an opportunity to start mapping out his actual plan. Because I think once the draft lottery occurs, I think that's when you could see some activity between these 7 teams that aren't back into it, because they'll have a little bit better of idea of where they'll be picking and what they actually have in a first-round draft pick this year. So the end of this month, things could start ramping up. We could start hearing some rumors and stuff like that, and we'll know hopefully where the Sabres are picking, and we'll have some more stuff to talk about.
Yep, and we'll be able to do our draft prep and look ahead to the draft, and maybe we won't have to do any of that because they'll have the first overall pick and be picking Alexis Lafreniere. But that's in a very hopeful and un-Buffalo-like way where they would get somehow lucky enough to move up that high. But again, like you said, it's going to be the first idea for Botterill to start mapping out his plan of where he wants to attack and where he wants to go with the draft pick. If he wants to trade it, use it, we'll have to wait and see with that. But we'll definitely have some more clarity with the situation after the 28th, so we'll probably be back with you guys for then. Unfortunately, there's no development camp this year, so we can't talk about that around that time, so we'll have to have something else to talk about optimistically for the Sabres, and hopefully we'll have some positivity to come back with when we talk about the draft lottery on the 26th, 27th, whenever it is. And maybe by then we'll know what's going on with the NHL playoffs, because we still don't really know what the deal is with that and when we're going to start seeing games and everything like that with what's going on with the pandemic. But just ending off, Austin, just what have you thought of this weird time in the NHL community with what's gone on here?
It's been, I don't know, it's been weird. You know what I mean? Like Wiki just said, it's a completely different situation. We've never experienced it before. A lot of the players, not a lot, but some players have been vocal, like, "Hey man, is this really worth it?" I'm not sure where I stand. Obviously, I miss hockey and I want it back, but the longer it goes on, the more torn I get. Obviously, I want hockey back, but I don't want them to be not putting 2021 into jeopardy, but the longer you go off without starting games, the longer you're pushing back the start of next season, and the longer you start to wonder, okay, is that going to affect the season after that? What is the true long-term effects going to be? So I hope hockey comes back, and I hope there's no hiccups, but until it actually comes back, I think part of me is always going to doubt, is it really coming back?
We might never see the regular season the way it is again. You never know. They could make some permanent changes that we'll have to wait and see what happens. But definitely for teams like the Sabres, especially with the 7 teams that didn't make the playoffs, they're going to need to get back on the ice at some point, because obviously they're going to be behind the 8 ball compared to the other 24 teams that are going to be playing again here to end the season. So it could be 8 or 9 months before those other 7 teams have stepped on the ice as a team and played in competitive games. So I think it's important for them to get involved in that.
Oh, 100%.
Yep.
That is truly something that needs to happen. And Botterill's press conference was the first I ever even heard of it, or even thought about that, really. I never thought about the fact that they're going to be off for 9 months, and then they probably need more than just a regular training camp, because let's face it, if the season ends in October and you want to start up again in December, the other teams are going to, you can look at it both ways, but they're going to be in shape because they would have been playing and they'll only have a month or 2 off. They'll be way more prepared to start a regular season than the 7 teams that haven't played since March.
And those are all the weakest teams, so that they're already at a disadvantage in that sense too. So
100%.
We'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But there it is, guys. That's going to wrap it up for today's episode of the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition. Again, we basically broke down with you in a 2-hour show, about 4 or 5 hours worth of press conferences there between players, coaches, GM. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that episode. And if you missed those interviews, just listen to the episode. We recapped it enough here for you. Don't go and listen to 5 hours worth of press conferences. Just listen to this episode like you do every single episode. We appreciate you guys tuning in, listening along with us. So we are your source for North American sports coverage by sports fans, for sports fans, delivered to you ready from the Niagara region. As always, I'm your host of the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition, Cappy. You can follow me on Twitter at Caputs13 with a Canadian Z, as well as my co-host Austin. You can follow him on Twitter at Austin_Broad for his great insight to the Buffalo Sabres, and again, a contributing writer for the ChargingBuffalo.net. Some great prospect information and articles that he's done on the upcoming draftees to the NHL, so go check out his articles there. And finally, to you viewers out there for listening along for this episode, and to our sponsors who will put us on, support the network, keep the show on the air. And once again, this has been the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition by sports fans, for sports fans on the Armchair GM Sports Network. We'll see you guys, hopefully, talking about the Sabres draft lottery win on the 27th. So we'll see you guys next episode.
See you guys next episode.